Here's an interesting little thing that we will get onto at some point in the not too distant future. A Dutch political philosopher is asking a question that we've asked on this programme a few times. How much is too much? She's invented something called limitarianism. The idea that there should be a cap upon just how much wealth the wealthiest people can have. They'd still be the wealthiest people, of course. I'm just seeding that with you. That's homework. I want you to start thinking about that. I don't think we'll get onto it this week. Maybe not even next week, but soon and for the rest of your life. No, I want you to think about that. Limitarianism. How much is too much? There are questions coming up, I think, for society as a whole that are philosophical rather than sort of sociological or economic. I think there is a great reckoning on the horizon when it comes to things like inequality and global warming and the settlement, if you like, the social contract. But I won't concern you with such matters today. I look at rather more urgent matters today. I look at this strange insistence that the escalating situation in Yemen, where American and British forces continue to attack positions held by so-called Houthi rebels, who themselves are launching attacks on, they say, American and British ships that, or affiliated vessels whose sponsor countries are supporting Israel's continuing offensive in Gaza. And speaking of Israel's continuing offensive in Gaza, I don't know whether this is going to be relevant to the answers you provide to the question that I'm about to ask, but there is quite a lot of coverage, very poignant coverage in the British newspapers today of the 21 soldiers who were killed while carrying out a demolition operation in Gaza. That they were working to destroy two houses in a buffer zone along the inside of the border with Israel when Hamas militants fired a rocket-propelled grenade at them, and the explosive charges they were laying to blow up these houses instead killed the soldiers. They were in the houses and they were still killed. And the headline in the Times I thought was very interesting. It says, Israel mourns bloodiest day in Gaza. I just thought that was telling in so many ways. So the bloodiest day in Gaza saw 21 Israeli soldiers tragically killed by their own explosives. And yet the death toll for Palestinians, as we have mentioned a few times in the last few days, has now exceeded 25,000. These deaths receive considerably more coverage in almost all of the UK media than any of those 25,000. I'm not entirely sure why that is. And I'm conscious that even opening the door to answering that question could lead in some pretty poisonous and unpleasant positions. But I will leave it hanging. 21 soldiers tragically killed yesterday while preparing to blow up somebody's homes in Gaza, receiving way more coverage in almost all of the British media than any of the 25,000 Palestinian deaths so far. That's not an opinion, that's just counting. And that brings us to Keir Starmer, who I have been feeling rather warm towards of late. I don't know whether you've noticed. I feel that he has really played a blinder on the so-called culture wars, so much so that the Daily Mail today appears to have had some sort of crisis. Having spent years banging on about the culture wars and wokeness, today the Daily Mail warns us that the woke are responsible for the fact that we don't make advertisements anymore like the ones we used to make 50 years ago. So, I mean, why can't we have advertisements like a good old-fashioned Benson and Hedges advert, asks the writer across 2 pages in the Daily Mail today, before telling us that the answer is all the wokes, all the wokeness. So having given a speech in which he essentially said, oh, stop being so silly and grow up with all the woke stuff, will you? Particularly with regard to the National Trust and the RNLI. The people who've spent the last 2 years banging on endlessly about wokeness, the people, in fact, who inspired Woke Watch, which I will probably do today, although I've already told you what's going to be in it, inspired Woke Watch, the feature on this programme. And now, because Keir Starmer has given a speech in which he said, oh, do grow up, you silly little people, they're absolutely furious with him for engaging in the culture wars. The columnist Sarah Vine has written, a characteristically incoherent piece about how Keir Starmer is a disgrace because he's got involved in the culture wars. You'll remember that Rishi Sunak appointed a politician called Esther McVeigh and let it be known that she was the minister for being anti-woke. But Keir Starmer giving a speech telling everyone to grow up is an appalling intervention in the so-called culture wars because, well, I don't know why. So that will probably feature in Smear Keir today. So thank God for the Daily Mail. Without the Daily Mail, we would probably not have a Woke Watch or a Smear Keir. Most days, let alone today. But Keir Starmer, I think, let us down a bit yesterday, possibly even a lot, because he shared the position that we were examining from Rishi Sunak's point of view. This continuing insistence that attacking Houthi positions in Yemen has absolutely nothing to do with the situation in Gaza, even as the Houthis make it clear that the reason why they are attacking certain vessels in that strait, in that Red Sea, is precisely because they are vessels affiliated with or flying under the flags of countries that are supporting Israel's offensive in Gaza. So I'll play you Sunak's words first, and then I'm going to play you Starmer's words, which I think are probably worse in many ways than Sunak's. And then I think I'm going to nudge you towards the question of why they... I don't normally like using the vague they in the questions that I ask you, but when you've got the two leaders of the two major parties singing from an almost identical hymn sheet, then I think you can use the word they in a sort of populist way. Why are they so desperate? Why are they so desperate to insist that these attacks have got nothing to do with what's going on in Gaza? 0345 6060 973 will be the number that you need. So first, let's hear from Rishi Sunak.
Mr. Speaker, I repeat that there is no link between our actions of self-defence in the Red Sea and the situation in Israel and Gaza. Those who make that link do the Houthis work for them. And I want to be clear that those here at home who glorify the Houthis' attacks are glorifying terrorism, plain and simple. They will be met with a zero-tolerance approach.
I haven't come across anyone glorifying the Houthis' attacks. And as we've said from the start, if you shoot things at me, then we will shoot things back at you. And that seems to me to be a fairly reasonable rationale upon which to conduct military operations. And therefore, the attacks upon Houthi positions are, for my money, completely justified, unless there are repercussions and ramifications that I'm currently missing, in which case you know what to do. But and the last thing I want to do is do the Houthis' work for them. God forbid that we should end up doing the Houthis' work for them. But I mean, how can it be that attacking ships because of affiliate or because of support for the situation in Gaza prompts attacks on the people attacking the ships because of the situation in Gaza, but it all has absolutely nothing to do with the situation in Gaza? It's strange, but. And if you were listening yesterday, you'll know I've got this problem sometimes of thinking, well, it can't be as I see it because they're in charge. It's the closest I come to deference. You can't end up even now, after Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, there is a part of me that says you can't end up being Prime Minister if you're a complete wombat. I've still got this weird... What is it? What is it? What is wrong with me? I've watched Liz Truss spend 10 minutes in Downing Street, set fire to the British economy, and I still have something inside me that says, you can't be Prime Minister if you're completely stupid. It's bizarre, isn't it? You look, I don't think I've got it in America. I don't know whether it's because Trump is just 10 times worse than everybody ever. You look at America and think, no, you really can have an absolute catastrophe, an absolute liability. You really can have a fascist, a full-on fascist in the White House. The American Constitution is not designed to withhold that threat, to withstand that threat. But I've still got it for Blighty. Is it patriotism? Is it a form of weird... I refuse to believe that you can rise to the highest offices in this land if you are a wombat. And here we are, Rishi the Wombat, currently Prime Minister. So yesterday I was tying myself in knots trying to come up with ways of justifying his words in a way that didn't take us all for mugs. And today I've got to do the same for Keir Starmer.
Like the Prime Minister, I totally reject the Houthi claims that attacking ships from around the world is somehow linked to the conflict in Gaza. These attacks do absolutely nothing for the Palestinian people.
So, why? I mean, one of the answers to the question that I'm about to ask you could simply be, because it's true, James, but you need a little bit of help understanding precisely what is going on. Okay, so why are Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer so adamant that attacking Houthi positions in Yemen has nothing to do with what's going on in Israel and Gaza, when under, pretty much any reading of the situation, they have at least something to do with what's going on in Gaza, and arguably everything to do with what is going on in Gaza. So don't go mad on me, all right? Don't come in with conspiracy theories. I certainly won't tolerate any anti-Semitic sort of tales of domination or influence. I want to know why Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer are so adamant that the attacks upon Houthi positions in Yemen have nothing to do with what is going on in Gaza, when any observer must suspect that there is some link, even if it's tiny. This insistence that there's no link whatsoever. What is that all about?